This is progressive policy. This is a good bill. The Inflation Reduction Act. A good bill. Reminder. A year ago, maybe a little bit more than a year ago, the world was introduced to the term Build Back Better. The supposed New Deal that Joe Biden was going to bring. And the Build Back Better bill, or the plan for it, would have genuinely been some of the most progressive, and I mean progressive, like all-encompassing. Like, I don't mean just like progressive as in like what like the news media would call progressive. I'm talking like old school, New Deal, Great Society type progressive policy. Putting money back into the hands of the working class people, supporting unions, building that on top of a climate policy that would last and provide good paying jobs. That's all encompassing. That's progressive policy. Progressivism is all encompassing. It's intersectional, meaning also intersectional across all of protected classes plus your actual like class. That is how you make lasting policy and a lasting impact in the history books, but that is not what we got. The Build Back Better plan was then split into the infrastructure bill, the bipartisan infrastructure bill, which passed due to the Manchin alliance, and the House Progressive Caucus, I would argue, failed to promote the dual package as one passed. They were supposed to pass both of them at the same time, and of course, Manchin screwed everybody over. So fast forward to about last month, and granted, this has been, worked on throughout, but about last month, Manchin comes out and he goes, you know what? I think we can do this bill. And I think it might have been a little bit less than a month ago where they were like, all right, we can really do this. Reconciliation bill, and basically dial down the Build Back Better plan by like I guess it's reducing by 75%. It's like 25% of what the original bill was. And that's okay. If you don't I think everybody engaging with this and watching this show knows that you can't judge a bill by its price tag. But with inflation rising, Schumer and Biden give Manchin the ability to go, oh, why don't you just name this bill whatever you want? And the Inflation Reduction Act of 2022 is born out of the ashes of the Build Back Better plan, which this bill, although aimed at reducing inflation in theory, is an all-encompassing reconciliation package. And really quickly, again, we go over this all the time, but just in case there's people that are newcomers, reconciliation is a process in which the Senate can pass a bill with a plain 50 vote majority. And that sounds silly because it's 50-50, but the vice president can break the tie. So it'd be 51-50. This bill passes, which then allowed for, and I'll just transition on over, the Inflation Reduction Act of 2022. Mostly, I would say, is a bill that focused, and I'll zoom in for folks at home, a bill focused on healthcare, which is a winning issue for Democrats, by the way, and climate. Now, again, the climate provisions in these bills, anytime you have someone like Joe Manchin, coal baron Manchin, you're not going to get the extent of the climate provisions that you want. But you can see it down here, that there are these investments in climate, in energy efficient climate reduction, carbon reduction efforts, in providing for solar, wind, fighting. I mean, look, you see like Western drought resiliency. We don't talk about it that much on the program. They don't talk about it much on corporate media. There's a drought in the Midwest that has been going on that has been affecting supply chains for the food supply. Again, something that hits every single one of us, as the majority of our food is actually grown out there. And then with those droughts comes then like the opposite, which I don't know if it's the right term, but you literally get hit with like monsoons in the middle of the country out of nowhere, because guess what? Climate change is freaking real. And voting for climate bills like this would actually help red states probably equally as much as blue states that are on the coasts, because the middle of the country is not isolated from these incidents. In fact, I'd say that there's probably more of these incidents that happen in the Midwest than almost anywhere else, except maybe droughts in California and like hurricanes in the South. We are seeing historic, I mean, the company I work for has to do like extreme disclosures around Winter Storm Uri, which, if you recall, knocked out the Texas power grid in 2021. These are things that continue to affect everybody in this country. Investing in climate bills like this, investing in renewable energy, is going to help everyone in the long term. Yeah, Shaz says Earth seems to be acting up in that area of the country too. It 100% is. It's not about your zip code. It's not about whether you wear a red or a blue tie. Now, the voting for this bill matters if you're wearing a red or blue tie. Supporting something like this, and this is what kind of really irks me about the climate change stuff. There's really no benefit for someone like me or progressives in general to push for climate bills, like to push for climate change, or like the climate crisis reduction bills, other than we want our planet to be sustainable, inhabitable, farmable. There's nothing that like we personally gain out of this. Like, I have no investment in like solar farms or wind farms that I'm going to get rich off of because of a bill like this, versus the subsidies, which there are subsidies in this bill for oil and gas companies. That's the bad part of this. They do get rich off of this. They are driven for profit, and the people that own them monetarily benefit from that. So when we weigh this stuff, when you're debating this stuff, remember there is no monetary material benefit to somebody fighting for a climate crisis reduction bill like this versus someone saying, okay, well, we should be investing in oil and gas and whatever. I mean, there are people that own those things, but again, if you want to take the John Fetterman route, make more shit in America. Put Americans in the driver's seat of the 21st century renewable economy, and that's the whole point. I have a whole chapter in my the book that I'm writing about this specific thing. The new American economy is built on sustainable energy if you want to fight for that economy, but you have to choose to do it. This bill also adds in the healthcare piece here is important. It expands Medicare benefits. And this is the biggest part, I think, out of the whole shebang, right? I'll talk briefly here. So come back to me. I'm talking to myself. So the only way that I can kind of describe this is The Affordable Care Act provides subsidies to people that might be of lower income, and that means lower income in comparison to like people that have employer-based healthcare. Because there's some people that are basically working class but don't get employer-based healthcare, and they fall below a certain line. If you have kids, I don't know the exact line, but you would get subsidies from the Affordable Care Act passed back in 2012, I believe. So when that kicked in, they had a 10-year sunset on these subsidies. Thus, the subsidies have been expanded in this bill. The second thing, and I said it a second ago, expansion of Medicare benefits. Now, that's fine. That's great, actually, I should say. Medicare is one of the best government programs that the American economy has ever had. However, the most important part of this bill, I will argue, over the long term, other than the climate provisions, which we need more of, is that the government that runs Medicare will be able to negotiate, and again, it's not all drugs, but will begin to be able to negotiate drug prices with pharmaceutical companies. Now, you might be asking, Connor, why does that matter? Or, Connor, I thought they already could do that. Which, the answer to that question, the second one, is no, they couldn't do that. Medicare, the single largest purchaser of pharmaceutical drugs in this country, might be the single largest purchaser of pharmaceutical drugs maybe in the world, was not allowed. Not that they couldn't do it to a certain number, not that they couldn't do it to certain drugs. They were not allowed whatsoever to negotiate prices of pharmaceutical drugs. Medicare that runs at 97% efficiency, which, what about that other 3%, Connor? Well, let me remind you that for-profit insurance companies run at less than 90% efficiency, meaning that these companies run for profit and skim off the top every pharmaceutical sale, every insurance claim that is shot down, that is profit to this company. Versus Medicare, where 3% goes to overhead and the remainder goes to care, that is efficiency. That is why we should have Medicare for all, but that's another story. This allows for the overall reduction in the government's deficit spending every single year, which, for those who care about the debt and the deficit, which I hear crickets from the Republicans, will lower the debt. Technically speaking, it will lower the deficit per year, which will thus will slow the rate of increase for the debt. This is important to note, that Medicare is funded by a specific paycheck tax that every single one of us pays. We all pay into the Medicare fund. So I think we all should want to reduce the costs to the taxpayer while increasing the benefits, because guess what? We can do it. It is a choice. It always has been. Some people, the Republican elected officials, do not support Medicare. They do not support Social Security. You watching this, you might be a Republican. You might think, yeah, why wouldn't I like Medicare or Social Security? These are some of the best programs. I benefit from them, or my dad does, or my grandma does. And yeah, you're right. And every once in a while you get Republicans that LARP and say that they care about Medicare or Social Security. And then they go and cut it. And then they go and vote to cut it. So the benefits here in providing for retired people specifically, because that's what Medicare is, will benefit us all because the reduction in spending for these drugs, which also means that which in tandem to this, there's a cap of out-of-pocket expenditures for pharmaceutical drugs for seniors on Medicare of about $2,000 every single year. So more money in grandpa's pocket, more money in grandma's pocket, which that means that you might be getting an extra $20 in the card coming in a couple weeks. You might get an extra Christmas card. I'm kidding, but this means that they can retire and live with dignity, which every single one of us should want for every single other one of us. That's the American dream. Again, this is all in tandem. If you take this stuff together and slam it together, it is a package that we need to really, really be... I mean, grateful might not be the right word because they're elected to do this stuff, but we should look at this stuff with some level of joy that something is getting passed that is actually going to work for the people.